his first thought was, he was like, hey, that there's some things that feel like they connect to the broad patterns that occur in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And then when he said, okay, wait a minute, there's 7 of these, there's 7 planets in this poem that Lewis wrote, and there's 7 Narnia books. And so, and then it just goes, he takes it from there and said, hey, maybe this is sort of the unifying underlying connection, you know?
Yeah. Welcome back to the Circle Dwellers podcast. This is a production of the Protestant Monastic Order of Life Mission Fellowship, where we talk about living out the gospel in an intentional Christian community. I'm Matt. This is my brother Tim, and I'm back from my vacation. Had a really great time. And yeah, so what we wanted to talk about today was this interesting concept that we learned here at the monastery a couple of years ago. I think you discovered this, right?
I mean, I guess sort of, yeah.
Yeah, I just don't remember.
I think I was probably the first one to read the book.
Yeah. I don't know how we stumbled across this idea. I don't remember that, but I remember you telling me about it, and then I ended up watching that Netflix documentary from Michael Ward. So anyway, what are we talking about here? What we're talking about is the so-called planet Narnia theory. So normally with these podcast episodes, we talk about community living and such. But given that this is a podcast mostly for Christians, and a lot of our audience probably really likes C.S. Lewis's Chronicles of Narnia, we thought we'd do just an episode on this theory, which is really fun and fascinating. And we've certainly gotten a lot of joy and life out of it. So yeah, so that's what we wanted to talk about today, is the planet Narnia theory.
Yeah, it's it was really exciting to me when I first heard about this theory. And it like initially it's kind of seems like maybe a little bit of a stretch or far-fetched. But then when you get into it, the more persuasive it seems. But I think like we'll get into what it is, but the appeal is that I think a lot of people have the experience of when you're reading Narnia, like feeling like there's more to it than meets the eye. It has this, like really special stories and works of art and things feel more than the sum of their parts, like there's a lot of depth to mine from them. And that's always been something that's really interesting to me, is like, why do certain stories you can, like you can watch them and just kind of be done with it and just say like, oh, that was good. And then other ones, it feels like there's almost a bottomless well of things that you can draw from it and keep watching it and getting something new out of it every time, kind of feeling, like the original Iron Man movie or something, right? Like I think I've only ever watched that once, and it's, it was fun to watch, but it's not something like that my brain continues to think about and like wants to go back and really experience that again. Maybe I want to watch that one again or something, but I haven't. But there's other ones where like I just feel compelled to watch it again, or every time I watch it again, I feel like they get something new out of it. And I definitely feel that with the Chronicles of Narnia. And I think Planet Narnia by Michael Ward is the closest thing I've seen of that comes up with a really good theory or explanation of why that is,
Yeah. You're kind of jogging my memory, but over Twitter this last week, there was a lively discussion happening about art in certain circles, about whether, especially in like the C.S. Lewis kind of crowd, about, is the purpose of books and fantasy and sci-fi to be to entertain, or is it for something transcendent? Well, to me, like, regardless of what things should be, I don't see either as being exclusive necessarily, but I definitely put the Chronicles of Narnia in that transcendent bucket for sure. It's a lot more than just a fun children's story with talking animals. And there's deep theological themes going through this book. Anyway,
Yeah.
what we
Yeah.
should
I
do
mean,
though is talk about what this is. Unless
uh,
I interrupted you. Maybe you had something.
yeah. Well, when you're just saying about the entertain thing, um, like that's an interesting debate for sure.
Mhm.
But I feel like if something just entertains, like, well, that's definitely something you want to pay attention to see
Mm.
how much of the things that you're consuming are just entertaining, or do they do, like, what's the quality of the entertainment that you're having, right? Because the I think it feels really cheap and a bit, um I guess, materialistic, even, to just say that, like, the main point of stories is entertainment.
Yeah, I've thought
Like,
that too.
it's just about, you have real life and normal life, and you go through, and that's all the real stuff, and then you watch a movie, and that's about just, like, escapism and
Escapism.
getting
Yeah.
away from the realism, or the real stuff, right? And that's just entertainment. And I think that, like, comes from, I mean, my intuition is that that comes from more of a materialistic perspective, where, it's just, oh, my body just needs to rest, or I just need to, entertain myself, rather than, like, the fundamentally of how we operate as humans is through stories, like,
Yeah.
that's how we interpret the world around us. And when you're watching a story, like, that's a really important thing that's happening, that is, even a spiritual kind of thing, of
Mm.
you growing and understanding the world around you, and what you're, how the Lord is leading you, how, what the pattern of your life is, and what your trajectory is, and, all these different, like, profound things are happening when you experience a story. And if you're doing a lot of just, oh, this thing is just entertainment, um I think that, like, eats away at your soul, because
Yeah.
it's, the you're kind of living in a lie about the reality of the world, um,
Yeah, that's a
and
great
and
point.
that,
That's
I
a really
think
good
that's
point.
why, like, so much stuff is so terrible lately too, is because they kind of just think it is just entertainment, right? Like,
Right,
all
right.
the superhero slop that we have now, and all of that, like, the people writing those clearly don't think that anything they're doing is much more important than simply entertaining.
I mean, if that, honestly, sometimes they're just trying to
Yeah,
beat you
even
over
if
the head
that,
with the
yeah.
message. Like, at least if they were entertaining, we would go to the movie to see it. Anyway.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Well, fortunately, though,
But I think the great things that you think are really entertaining, they often are only that because there actually is a
yeah.
underlying structure that matters, and points at the true, the good, and the beautiful in some way, that,
Mm,
even if it's, I kind of, it's not like Shakespeare or something, but it's, those things that really capture your imagination and stuff. There's something under there that's worth thinking about, of why that is. Generally, if you're also, that also has to do with how well your own imagination has been, trained, I suppose, too.
yeah.
It's like,
Moral
because you can have
imagination.
bad taste, right? And so you can end up, oh, I just want to watch slop,
Right,
like, you can,
exactly.
so there's some element there too.
Yeah. Well, fortunately, though, we are talking about something that is very close to being an absolute masterpiece. So what we should do is to talk about what this theory is. And right now, I have only ever seen the documentary, the Narnia Code, which I think you can get online. I remember watching it on Vimeo or something. Uh, anyway, so feel free to correct me if I get some details wrong, because I know you've read the actual book where you goes through
Yeah,
the
I
whole
actually
theory.
haven't. Well, no, maybe I did watch the documentary. I can't remember.
I know
I
you
watched
recommended
something.
it to me.
Yeah, maybe I did.
So
Yeah.
yeah. All right. Well, anyway, but from what I understand, Michael Ward, he was a Christian scholar at Oxford, and he was actually rooming in the same room that I believe Lewis had at the school. So that was kind of cool. But he was reading a poem that Lewis wrote called The Planets. And this one passage stood out to him. I'm just going to read this in section. It's talking about Jupiter, or Jove. And it says, it is Jove's orbit filled with and festival, faster turning with arc ampler, etc., etc. Came from his cargoes, the Cornish treasure that his ray ripens, of wrath ended and woes mended, of winter past and guilt forgiven. That kind of sounds like The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, doesn't it? Right? Like,
Well,
that's
I'll say, I'll just be generous. If you're hearing Matt read that for the first time, you probably aren't going to initially say, "Oh, that sounds like the the Lion, the Witch, the Wardrobe." Now, when you explain it more, if you really think about it, you'll see. But
right.
I don't know. I really like poetry, but most often when you just read poems to somebody,
It's just very dense.
They just they just glaze over. They're like, "What did you just say?" You know?
Right.
So if we break down, and so this is a poem that Lewis had written, and what was Michael Ward's discovery is he was so. To back up a minute, I think, like I said at the beginning, that people have this kind of feeling that there's more than meets the eye to Narnia. There's been, and Ward lays this out, but there's been quite a few people who have tried to come up with like a unifying theory, right, of what the pattern of all those 7 books are together. And I forget even exactly what are the ones he lists, but I think there's like oh, it's like the 7 virtues, or it's or something like that, or there's all these different things that people have put forward, some seriously, some just saying like, hey, this kind of works, it's an interesting way to think about it, but none of those have really rung true exactly. But it's interesting that quite a few people have that feeling and have wanted to try to fit the Narnia books into some kind of framework like that. Because on the surface of it, you look at all those books, like if you just read them out, the plots of them, they're very different. Like they don't sound like sequels to each other, right? Like they have very different narrative structures. They're not the same. Like, Harry Potter book 1 and book 2, actually, like all of them pretty similar in narrative structures. I mean, because she structures each one around a school year, right? So they already kind of have that. But like, it's kind of, they have the same basic feeling of structure. You can totally quibble with me about like, oh, but this one's really different because it has the the wizarding game in this one, and it's totally
post in the comments.
But overall, it's like
wrong.
It starts off, Harry goes to school, and then new teachers are introduced, new possible way Voldemort's going to come around is introduced. They solve the thing and have to figure out what the bad thing is in the year, and then they solve it by the end of the year, and then they're forgiven all the ways they broke the rules because they solved it. Like they're all kind of like that, to some degree or another. So, but like the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and the Voyage of the Dawn Treader,
Prince Caspian,
very different structures, but yet they all feel coherent. Like when you read them, like they all fit together really well. And you'd be hard pressed to say why that is, And then also there's a lot of weird eclectic things, which Lewis was criticized a lot even by his peers and stuff. Like,
what's with Father Christmas showing up?
Father Christmas just shows up, but he's also got like fauns and Greek mythology, and like those don't go together.
Yeah, exactly.
And all that. And so like on paper you say like, yeah, that's, you could even say that's dumb. Like, why you just make this eclectic mishmash of stuff, but yet as a reader, a lot of people who really like the material, they go through it and it doesn't feel like a mishmash of stuff. It feels like it all fits. And so people have been trying to figure that out. And then Ward has he thinks he found the secret key behind it, right? Of why it all fits together. And this poem that Matt just read is what was his initial discovery. He was reading it one evening, I think, and
Mhm.
then it just popped out at him. He goes, "Wait a minute, what is he describing here?" And so the poem um, is actually, I think, the excerpt you have here, because the poem is called "The Planets," right?
Yes.
And this is just one. There's a like a stanza per planet, I think, in the
Yes.
original
Yeah,
poem.
that's
Yeah,
right.
and so the poem "The Planets" talks about the medieval planets, of which the moon is also a planet in
Mhm.
the medieval parlance, and so there were
And the sun.
7 known planets, including Earth, or
Remember, we're
uh,
in a geocentric universe here, so anything that
yeah,
moves
yeah,
in the
but
sky is a planet,
so
basically.
there's 7 total,
Right.
um, and of what the medievals would consider the planets, and so this poem talks about those 7 planets. Um, but then if you go through, so with the Jove one, what Matt just read, there's different points where he talks about what Jove represented in the medieval planets. There's a lot of themes in there that sound awful like the Lion, the Witch, and the
Mhm.
Wardrobe themes.
Wrath
And so the
ended.
one is that,
Right.
yeah, wrath ended, guilt forgiven. So that,
Mhm.
you have, yeah, Eustace and his betrayal, but then he's forgiven and redeemed.
Winter
There,
passed, right?
yeah, there's the Lion-Hearted, which, I mean, all of them have Aslan in it, but like this is the central one, right?
Mhm.
Um, uh, Jock and Revel. There's a whole scene where all the animals are feasting
Mhm.
outside, and the uh, yeah, from the Isles of Tin, Tyrian traders and trouble steering came with his cargoes, the Cornish treasure, that his ray ripens, of wrath ended and woes mended, of winter past, right? So that's the big
Mhm.
one, right? Because it's that the whole theme of winter.
Winter's
It's
ended,
always
yeah.
winter, never Christmas, and then it ends, right? And all of that. So his first thought was, he was like, "Hey, that there's some things that feel like they connect to the broad patterns that occur in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe." And then when he said, "Okay, wait a minute, there's 7 of these, there's 7 planets in this poem that Lewis wrote, and there's 7 Narnia books." And
Mhm.
so, and then it just goes, he takes it from there and said, "Hey, maybe this is sort of the unifying underlying connection, you know."
Yeah.
And it's, there's so much that you could go into, which we're not going to take all that time. Maybe we could do a follow-up or something with
Yeah.
some more
Well, we
stuff
should
about it,
probably
but
just run through it really quickly just so we
yeah.
kinda get a sense of this. Like in Prince Caspian, that maps to Mars, which, as you know, is the god of war, which makes sense because it's a military book. There's also themes about the forest in there. Mars is connected to forests. Also, I think in the Prince Caspian, there is a creature mentioned, the Sylvans, which only show up in that book and very, very shortly. So again, that felt like this kind of weird thing out of place. But again, if Ward's theory is correct, that matches with Mars, so it makes sense.
Right.
Voyage of the Dawn Treader, that's a solar book. So there's lots of imagery of the light and heading towards the east.
And
The
remember,
sun.
so the Sol is considered a planet in the
Right.
medieval construction. I think I said something wrong too about, like, Earth is a
Earth is not
planet,
a
but it's
planet.
it's
Yeah,
the 7 other planets, right?
exactly.
Besides us, right? Yeah.
Again, we're in
Um,
a geocentric model
yeah.
here. So, right. The silver chair, that's the moon, a silver moon. There's that. There's lots of things about confusion versus obedience, right? Lunacy,
Madness.
madness,
Yeah.
it's that stuff. The horse and this boy, that's Mercury. That's where we get the word mercurial from. There's a duality. There's twins as well. Lots of twins in that book, as you know. Cor and Corin, they're twins. This joining together, coming apart. Magician's nephew, that's Venus. Venus is the god of love. So and it's fertility and beauty and birth and all that jazz. So lots of things there. Jadis gets introduced in that book, and she's like the infernal Venus. If you have read the Screw Tape Letters, it's that kind of imagery. And then the last battle is Saturn, which is apocalypse and death, decay, uh, and that planet was associated with those things as well.
Yeah. So Yeah, and it's. I mean, I'm pretty convinced that that's there. What's really neat about it though is the um is all the groundwork that Ward does. So he has each chapters with each book and talking about how those patterns play out and how they match um, Lewis's sensibilities, and he was a medieval scholar, obviously, so uh, that would make sense that he'd be drawn to those ideas. But the beginning of the book especially is just so interesting, where he talks about the difference between allegory and symbolism and how
Mm.
Lewis looked at that, the role of symbolism that it plays. One of the key ideas that he talks about that Lewis discussed in other essays is like this idea of looking along the light versus looking at the light, and having two different kinds of knowing. So there, the idea that to truly know something, you have to know it in two different ways, where there's just it's you can kind of categorize it as like intellectual knowing versus experiential knowing is sort of that
It's
doesn't
fairly
quite
close.
fully
Yeah.
grasp it, but it's sort of like that kind of divide. um and all of that material that he lays to kind of build his case for this is really fascinating too, because um it's all stuff that Lewis has talked about, and in his writings on stories and storytelling and meaning and different things. But I found it really profound just for understanding story in general, and being someone who would like to write stories at some point too, like that's very interesting. But also just like the the understanding of where, like, with truth and beauty,
Mm.
how that needs to be embedded inside our lives in a
Yes.
real way,
Yes.
in order to truly live it out and to truly understand it and know it. Um, I just got a whole new understanding of that by reading this book, because all those principles, I think, of how what gives a story that magic and that specialness, and the kind of the premise and Lewis's instinct of how you get that into a story, right? That's something that Lewis writes about in his essay on stories. He gave this lecture about the kappa element, and it's he calls it atmosphere, the kind of the atmosphere of
Hmm.
um, a story, that it's really hard to kind of grasp why that is in there. Um, and reading this kind of helps show like some of the elements of how you get that into a story, adding those deeper layers of meaning, where it's like a bottomless pit of things that you can find and learn from and grow from and keep coming back to.
Yeah.
And it's through this process of like embedding these kind of structures in it, like and like these patterning things off of these cosmic structures, is how he did it, of the different planets, um, is one way that adds to this depth to the story, that gives um, your intellect and your imagination a fertile playground to go find truth, and to have the Holy Spirit speak to you through it, and all these different things. And it's just been really fascinating to me, because I think that those principles also apply to like the life that we live together too, and how there's all these different layers to that you want to embed these patterns in, to bring the truth into your life everywhere, and like a lot of different ways. I feel like we do that is like the way we choose a different theme every week for the Sunday service, or that we the way Dad picks out a artwork to be the kind of um the theme of the week, and that we put on the TV and we see every time we're eating together and all that. those kind of things add this deeper layer of meaning underneath everything, I feel like, that helps you embody and truly make the story of our lives together come alive and not just be something shallow and empty, you know?
Yeah, it's like Christianity isn't just about believing something, it's living something. It's living a new story every day and in many different ways. So, yeah,
Yeah.
I totally agree. Ever since I've learned about the theory, I've definitely had that similar experience where, yeah, I remember in episode we did a couple of weeks ago where we're talking about that game, The Witness, right? Where you're saying like that helped you understand the hiddenness of God. And, uh, and I feel like Planet Narnia is on that similar, um, it's on that similar feeling. Like God is in everything. He's around you. He's always there, but he can be found in lots of different ways. And there's this richness of meaning and symbolism that you can find everywhere if you just have to go looking for it. And Lewis kind of helps you see that of what Paul was saying, where in him we live and move and have our being.
Right. Yeah.
Anyway, speaking of that, next week we're planning on talking about how we do arts and culture during our church service. So be sure to hit the subscribe button and like this if you stick around for that, if that sounds interesting to you. Also, please give us a comment as well. YouTube really likes it when you give us likes or comments and things like that. So we appreciate it. And we read everything we receive. And check that out. Also, if you're on Spotify or another podcast app, you can give this a 5-star rating. That also really, really helps us. And yeah, I think that's all the plugs.
Awesome. Yeah, well, thank you for your attention and have a blessed day.